So many of you watch me every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. where I present a short tip or a commentary on something that will bring us more awareness in our life. These aren't designed, I often bring in scripture and biblical stories and things of that nature, but it's not designed to be a preaching segment. It's designed to bring about an awareness. Because many of us, as we know, that we don't change our behaviors and our thoughts and our actions until there's an awareness around that. So thank you for allowing me to do this special on-scene in the Garden of Joyful Living. In the Garden of Joyful Living came about earlier in 2018. I'm an outdoor person. And every Saturday morning I would go out and I'd sit on my patio and have my coffee. And I was sitting there this morning and God talks to me and I hear him. He said, show this to the people. I was like, show them what? I'm just doing what I do. And he said, show them. So I turned my Facebook Live on and I started talking and showing people my plants, and I related that back to something in our life. Mm-hmm. So I've been doing that every Saturday morning since then, and that was in, I think, April, right after I had planted my patio garden. So many of you know that I had both my knees replaced. I had torn cartilage, bone spurs, pitting, you name it. I had so extensive damage that I needed to have my knees replaced. The wear and tear over time literally destroyed my knees. Many of us need a joint replacement. Over time, the damage that we've experienced in our life has left us feeling brokenhearted and broken-spirited. Death, divorce, disease, illness, it all damages our joy. And when we need to get our joy replaced. We were created to live in joy. But we can't live in the joy and the abundance that God has for us when we are heavy laden, broken down, and brokenhearted. We are living with pain, sadness, all of these emotions and feelings that we never addressed. When we are heavy laden like that, it causes bitterness, resentment, and anger to attach itself to us. And we know that joy, my business is Joyful Living with Kimberly, Dixon. Joy is one of the 9 fruits of the Spirit. But a tree can't produce good fruit if something is attached to it at the root. And when we have anger, resentment, bitterness attached to us, we can't produce good fruit. Think of it as a spectrum. On one end of the spectrum, you've got bitterness. On the other end of it, you've got joy. You can't live in joy if you're bitter. The two cannot reside in the same space. So Psalms 51:10 says, create in me, O God, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. And we all think of sin as the things that we do or the actions that we do or commit, but we don't think about the sins of our heart, resentment, anger, and bitterness. You can't produce good fruit if you are angry, bitter, and resentful. So I want I know plants. So think of it this way. In a garden, if a worm attaches itself to the root, that plant is going to wither and die. If disease attacks the roots, that plant will wither and die. Now, if something gets on the leaves, a fungus or something of that nature, I know how to handle that. I can treat that. But when something is attached to you at the root, you will wither and die. Same thing happens to us when bitterness is attached to us at the root. So in order for us to live in the joy that God has created for us, we got to start dealing with the issues of our heart. That brokenheartedness that we haven't looked at, that we refuse to look at. We just put it in a closet and said, I'm okay, and went on about our life, but we weren't okay. Because have y'all ever met anybody, and I'm just going to be real, because you know I can't be anything other than that. Somebody that's saved, but they mean.
Oh, yes.
Yes. They so mean, you can't talk to them. And it was like, and people in the church are afraid of them. Anger and joy can't reside in the same space. You got to deal with the matters of the heart. What is it that's hurting you? In order for you to have joy, we're going to have to start forgiving. And that means you're going to have to go back and forgive those people who walked out on you. And that mother or father that left you when you were a baby. That anger that you feel for them, you can't have joy if you're still harboring that. The person that walked out on you, the person that neglected you, the person that abused you. the person that betrayed you, and in some cases, that person who violated you. In order for us to live in the joy that God has for us, we got to deal with the issues of our heart. And you might be thinking, Kim, you don't know what happened to me. You don't know my story. It's like, but this is what I can tell you about, but I know my story. I know of being born with a disease that every time I took a step, I landed on my face. I know about growing up in a household where I was neglected. And I know about being sexually assaulted that occurred when I was 20. It's like, I don't know your story, but I know mine. And I know that the joy that I have today is only because I went back and I looked at those hard places, those things, that I built a wall up around my heart because I didn't want to touch that. It was too sensitive. It was sensitive to the touch. Just packed it away. But it wasn't until I went back to the root, because I couldn't live in the joy that God had for me until I released those things at the root. So this morning in the Garden with Joyful Living, and we're indoors. 3 seasons out of the year we are outside, and I love being outdoors. I'm a hiker. I go outdoors every day, but it's too cold to be sitting outside. And I'm not going to ask y'all to sit out there. But I am really grateful that God put this in my heart to do this, because just this small awareness can help us bring about changes in our life that are profound, that will take us into the next year. All throughout this month, I've been talking about joy. In the last 2 segments, I did it on depression, because this is a season of merriment and joy, but for many people, this is a season of depression.
That's right.
And again, today we are talking about those things that are attached to us at the root. What is the root problem? And how can we start to live a better life when we start looking at the things that have attached themselves to us? It may not have been your fault, but it doesn't even matter. It's like it's your responsibility to yourself so that you can live in the abundance and the joy that God has. You know, we are heirs. We are the children of Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac. And we're supposed to live in a land of milk and honey. And milk and honey is not all about material possessions. Now, they're great, but that's not what they're all about. But living in a land of milk and honey is when that no matter what the weather is like, no matter what the circumstances are in your life, that you can still have a joy in your heart. A joy, unspeakable joy. So that is all I had for you guys this morning.